So I'm just going to ask some questions, and I'll write an article on your thoughts and that sort of thing.
I have written several times. I've written articles giving my background as a stamp collector.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm sure some of them are in what you just downloaded.
Yeah, and I'll find them there. So if a question is already answered in those previous publications, then just tell me that, and we'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
Okay.
Except I won't be sure of
Okay.
if it's in there. So I'll probably answer it and say, I think that's in there.
Yeah,
So,
and that's fine. Okay, so what things have you been collecting over the years here?
okay, you want me to start kind of from my beginning as a stamp collector?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, I started out when I was 8, I think I was 8 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandfather, my mother's dad, had put away some foreign stamps from the kind of the inflationary time in Germany, World War One, post World War One, a lot of European stuff from then, and he gave them to me, and they were just in some manila envelopes,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave those to me, and I was enthralled by Belgium, the Netherlands,
Yep.
Great Britain, Germany, Italy, and all these exotic places that a kid only dreams of.
Yep.
And that Christmas, my parents gave me a very, very basic Minkus Worldwide album, and it wasn't real big. But I enjoyed putting the stamps in there, and of course I put some in wrong places and needed help sorting them out and getting them right. But I wish that I had kept that album, and I didn't. I wish that I had kept it for posterity, but I didn't. So
where did it end up going? It like got lost or something?
I don't know if I sold it or traded it, or
Yep.
I don't know. I
Yep.
really don't. I suspect I took any stamps I wanted out of it before I disposed of it, but
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I did exactly with it. And over the years, I collected U.S. and foreign, and my parents, my dad especially, was a stamp collector when he was a youth, and he would buy me, he'd make sure he would get me the latest commemorative issue, just a stamp or two from the post office, and then he started getting plate blocks for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had some plate blocks, and I continued on, and then in middle school, I met a very good friend who lived just 2 houses away from me, and he collected stamps, and so we used to have a good time trading, and we would fill out the envelope to get first day cancels.
Yep.
Just not non-cached. We didn't cache any of them or anything like that, but we'd send them off and get them, and that was exciting watching for them to come back in the mail.
Yep.
Eventually we started going to, I lived in Wauwatosa at the time, we started going to the Wauwatosa Stamp Club meetings, which were held at a local church in Wauwatosa, and those guys were so good to us. Here's these 7th graders coming down, and what can I buy for 25 cents?
Mm-hmm.
And they took time for us, they mentored us, they were just really neat guys to work with. I don't remember any of their names now,
Mm-hmm.
but I still kind of have a fond place in my heart for the Wauwatosa Stamp Club.
Yep.
And then we moved. We moved from Wauwatosa out to Burlington, and I started high school, and I got into football and girls and homework and things like that, and stamp collecting kind of fell by the wayside.
Sure.
And it stayed by the wayside for several years. But unbeknownst to me, my dad was still picking up the occasional plate block. You know, he didn't make it a practice to get every single one, but he got quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so in time, he would give those to me. And I went through college, still not much interest in it. Met my wife, we got married, we had kids, and it just wasn't time for stamps. You know, there was everything else going on in my life. And so then we moved, the course of my life, I moved from Wisconsin to North Carolina. That's where my first job was, as a forester. And I still didn't have a lot of interest. In fact, I did not treat my stamps very well. We moved to North Carolina, the coastal plain, which was very humid.
Yep.
And I think somebody at our last meeting talked about the woes of humidity.
Yep.
And I had this block of plate box that was a solid block.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it had all melted together.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a real shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was a lot of those my dad had picked up and saved for me, you know. I salvaged what I could and you know, used the rest for postage, and it came out of that. We moved back up north. I took a job with Procter & Gamble buying wood for their pulp mill in Green Bay. And then they initially stationed me in Green Bay, but then they transferred me. They wanted me to open a field office in Iron Mountain area. So I did that, and I met this wonderful stamp dealer friend. I was interested in the company wanted me to get out into the community, and so I joined Kiwanis Club. And one of the first meetings I went to, this wonderful guy did a program on stamp collecting. And I thought, wow, I got stamps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this might be interesting. So I went to the program, talked to him afterwards, and it turned out to be a guy that was also a newcomer to our church up there. So here were these two newcomers. He'd come from the eastern end of the UP, and I'd come from Green Bay, and we kind of got together and hit it off, and our wives and families hit it off. And Jim Stearns, some of the guys will recognize that name, not everybody, but he kind of mentored me, and every month I would save up $20 or something and go over to his house where he had his office, spend the night drinking coffee and going through stamps and buying my monthly allowances worth of stamps.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim got me into some nicer foreign albums of Scott International Volumes 1 and 2, which covered most of the stamps, not all, but most of the stamps up through 1949. And I thought, well, that's a good place to cut it off. There are some stamps in the early 50s that I really like and appreciate, but for the most part, the stamps I really enjoy are the earlier engraved stamps and that sort of thing. So I got involved in that, and Jim and I became very, very close friends. We started bow hunting together, and here's the interesting thing about Jim. Jim was an albino, and consequently, he was legally blind. And here's this guy who is a stamp dealer and a bow hunter, and he's legally blind,
Okay.
you know? And people said, weren't you scared to hunt with him? I said, no. I said, he just knows. He knows what's going on, and he can see shapes, but they're very obscure. And so anyway, we went to Chicago PEX together. We started going to shows, and my collecting evolved from that point on into more in-depth foreign and US, the Netherlands and Canada. And that's kind of where I'm at today. Now I've added a couple more things. I've added covers, which I thoroughly enjoy. And that's kind of the story of my stamp collecting.
Yeah. How much have you shown? Have you ever shown at, whatever, some sort of event, whether it's...
I've never shown competitively. I have shown sometimes like Milkopex or Wiskopex, they'll have, like 4-page exhibits or 8-page exhibits.
Yep.
I've shown a little bit there, and I kind of enjoy doing it. It takes a little bit to put it together,
yeah,
but it's kind of fun and it's educational. It teaches you learn more about the subject and the stamp
yes,
than if you just look at it.
that's right. Yep, I've noticed the same thing. Okay, good. So the shows that you actually exhibited were at Wiskopex, or was it some other show?
I've exhibited non-competitively
Yeah.
at Wiskopex and Milkopex.
Okay.
Those two.
Yep.
I've also the American Topical Association has like a single, I can't remember, if it's single page or single stamp exhibit program that they do every year. I've participated in that. I've participated in other things, like I'm a member of American Topical Association Chapter 5 out of Milwaukee, and they sometimes have a little friendly competition. Like if you put something into this, then you can get free dues for the next year.
Yeah.
So I've done some things like that.
So do your children have an appreciation for the hobby? And did they do it when they were children? Or
I tried to get, I tried, just so you know, the cleaners are here. I don't know.
Okay.
I tried to get my kids interested. My son, my oldest son, was interested for a while and then lost interest.
Yep.
Hello? Hello? And then,
Okay. Hello.
So that was kind of the, I had a grandson that was interested for a little while.
Yeah.
But nothing lasting.
Okay. Have you made plans to pass it on? It's a hard question, so feel free to decline. But
I'm in the midst of determining that right now.
yeah.
And I think what I'm going to do, For those that don't know, I do have some health issues right now.
Sure.
And so that's come to mind, and my wife has kind of been after me because she says, none of us know anything about this. And she said, I need names of people to contact or something. So I've been thinking about disposing of my foreign stamps, or most of my foreign stamps, keeping my Canadian and my US and my cover collection.
Okay.
One of the things that is very interesting that I came across, you asked me about, did I feel rewarded by the exhibiting?
Yes.
And one thing that helped me a lot too was being the editor for the local stamp magazine.
Yep.
And our stamp bulletin, and then I also was the editor for a while for Across the Fence Post. And that forced me to learn about different parts of stamp collecting, different entities. One of the interesting things I came across was a cover in my collection that I've written about. And it was, I started looking at it and reading it, and it was about the election for statehood back in 1847 for Wisconsin statehood, as from my home county, Racine County. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. I dug into it, and it had a lot of detail around how many votes were cast both ways. And there was a second referendum on there besides statehood, and that was what the status of, I think it called them colored people in what would be the new state. And interestingly, statehood failed, but the referendum on personhood for colored people passed. And I dug into that, and I said the reason that the statehood failed was because Wisconsin was very anti-banking, and they thought there was too much in favor of banking in there, and they didn't want that in there. So they, maybe they thought it was too restrictive. Don't remember what now, but they.
I'm just going to move this closer because
Okay.
you're just a little quieter than you were before. So this will help.
So they voted it down, and then the next year they rewrote it. And as we all know, in 1848, Wisconsin voted to become a state.
Yeah.
And so I never knew that there were two elections for that before that time. And I never knew the rationale behind why it was voted down and that sort of thing. And it was very interesting researching that. I looked at the cover. I said, I wonder who this was addressed to. And then it's addressed to the Honorable Henry Dodge, who was the governor at the time. And so that was one piece of very interesting history and education that I gained from stamp collecting.
Okay. So what resources do you use, online or books or whatever, in order to do this hobby?
I use primarily the Harris U.S. catalog. which I know is not the most popular. Everybody likes Scott. But the Harris catalog has colored pictures of every stamp. It has good detail around what some of the secret marks are and the hidden things that you need to look for the different stamps. It has, it just has more in it. I know the prices aren't as accurate, but I can live with that.
It's interesting. It's like the latest book I bought was a Harris book as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I found the same thing.
And then for my Canadian collection, I use the Unitrade catalog, and I use Scott International catalogs, and I don't try to keep up with them. I mean, they're so expensive, but I do try to keep them current, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's good enough for me. I don't need to have what was issued last year, but I do need to know, what was in the last 5 years or 10 years or something. So
yeah, good. So you've talked about this friend who was a dealer, and
mm-hmm.
what makes a good dealer in your mind? You've probably met many over the years.
I'm not a dealer, so
Sure.
You got to keep this in frame of context here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a buyer talking. It's somebody who's very honest about, they're not trying to hide faults. They're not trying to, they call them out.
Yeah.
And they call out if it's a fake or a forgery or something like that.
Sure.
So they're not trying to pull one over on the collectors to make a good sale or that kind of thing. They are interested in your interests.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have what they like about it and what you like about it, and they kind of try to blend those together. One that's not too pushy, one that says like, "Oh, here, I got something for you today, Ray. You got to buy this one,
Mm-hmm.
It's only $100."
Yeah, right.
and for some people out there, $100 may not be a lot, but for this guy, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So you've gone to many shows over the years. So
Mhm.
what makes a good show in your mind?
I think a good show has fun exhibits to look at. I enjoy looking at the exhibits, but I don't like a lot of detail in them because I don't have time to read them all. It's not that I'm not interested in it,
Yep.
but I want to look at it, get the meaning of it, and go on to the next one. I enjoy a variety of dealers, and I'm getting to the point where I know a lot of the dealers that'll be at the shows around Wisconsin, and I can walk into the room and know the people, and I can go sit down and have a conversation with them, and how's the wife and kids, or how's come across anything interesting lately, and they kind of know, and you can carry on a conversation like that back and forth.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And you belong to numerous societies before. So what makes a good society? Local club.
Active participation.
Okay.
You gotta have, people need to participate. It's so hard to get people to step forward and take on responsibility and that kind of thing. And the clubs aren't that big anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody needs to do their part. And I'm not trying to beat anybody up here, but I am trying to emphasize, look, folks, if you want these things to continue, you got to do your part to help them.
Yeah.
So,
And we've got an aging society.
Yeah.
The whole hobby is aging.
yeah,
Is that concerning to you?
a little bit, yeah, because I think it is, but I think it's been aging for quite some time. And I'm not sure it's getting older than it has been the last 20 years.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it's aged considerably since then. But I agree that the number of youth in the hobby is dwindling, and we need to find ways to keep them interested. I think in our club, Richard's doing an excellent job.
Isn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, and that was it. You who filled out the paperwork for him to get an award. Who's
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
excuse me. That's not supposed to be widely
known.
known.
Yes.
It's,
Okay.
so you may not.
Yep. I won't be showing.
Okay.
it. And,
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Agree. Okay. So yeah. So it's like, yeah, our hobby isn't dying; it's declining, and it's like it's going to take some creativity on people's part to make sure that it's not a dying hobby
Yeah.
entirely.
Yeah, like and some of the things that Richard's come up with are things that have been thought of over the years, and it just haven't. I think that we've lost the knowledge to use those things, but like using stamps to teach geography.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
wonderful.
using to teach history,
Yep.
using them to teach math. If it costs so much for the first ounce and so much for the second ounce and so much for the third ounce, how much does it cost to mail this
Uh-huh.
letter? It's as wide as the imagination
Yep.
and how you can use them. Art is another one that they are using stamps
Yep.
for.
Art and politics and social changes that need to be made are huge in the stamp world.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, neat. So, do you do much in the way of going into auctions? And
I have participated in auctions. I've participated in live auctions, in silent auctions, in online auctions.
so, how do you go about finding auctions? Either
I don't usually actively seek them out. They find me.
Mhm. Okay.
Bill Robinson, was a longtime member of our club, and when he passed, he was very, very knowledgeable and accomplished in having auctions of stamps and stamp covers, and I actively sought out where his collection was going to be sold because I wanted to look through it, and I did manage to acquire a few things, but not a lot. But there's some things I'm kind of excited about. Local, I from a cover standpoint, I collect Brown County where I live now, and Racine County where I grew up.
Okay.
And those are the two main counties I collect right now. I do have some other passing interests in Wisconsin railroad postal history. I have a few things, and they're odds and ends. And again, they're things that I picked up and then I wrote about, learned a little bit about them,
Mhm.
and probably forgot most of what I learned, but it's still fun going through the process.
Okay. So, what question haven't I asked you that you would like to cover?
don't know. I think you've been pretty complete.